You know, if there's no ID, I don't think you should be able to get a ballot, vote, and walk away. It's a loophole that's ripe for fraud.
And one might wonder, if something was ripe for fraud, one might wonder why we haven't heard about the juicy details of that fraud happening. That lack of evidence of fraud hasn't stopped Nampa Senator Brian Lenney from bringing back another attempt to get rid of one of Idaho's means of voter identification, the personal identification affidavit.
Because right now in Idaho, you can show up to the polls and vote with no photo ID. I know because I did it last year, test out the system. And sure enough, you can show up, no photo ID, and vote.
And well, because PICS or it didn't happen, Senator Lenney then posted about that, the affidavit, to his Twitter page on October 29th, after apparently taking advantage of another Idaho allowance to make voting more accessible. That would be early voting. And that's a heck of a signature there, Senator Lenney. All I had to do was sign this piece of paper saying, "I swear I am who I say I am," Senator Lenney posted. Hope to get rid of this affidavit process next year. I already have the bill drafted, he wrote, which is easy to do when you just copy and paste the same bill from 2 years ago. Senator Lenney's Senate Bill 1049 is almost identical, word for word, almost a carbon copy of the bill Republican Representative Joe Alfieri sponsored in 2023. That year, there were 2 attempts to get rid of the affidavit option for Idaho elections. The first one never got a hearing, but Representative Alfieri's bill did, and it was killed on the House floor.
You could significantly change an election based on people who are ineligible to vote. The affidavit is just wrong. We require identification for so many aspects of what we do in this society. It is beyond the pale that we should allow people to vote without proving who they are.
Well, as was pointed out that day on the House floor, if ineligible voters can sway an election, the inverse is also true. If you deny the right to vote to someone who is already registered, and to register they do need a photo ID, and they are turned away because they forgot to bring that ID, well, that could be seen as voter suppression. But let's go back even further. Any idea how long Idaho has required an ID to vote? Only since 2010, when all you needed to vote before that was just your signature. No identification. You just had to sign your name next to your name in a poll book to say, "I am who I say I am." Well, we apparently began losing faith that year because that session, Representative Mike Moyle got his voter ID bill passed, which required an ID to vote, but it also included the option to sign an affidavit for those who mistakenly show up to vote without their driver's license. Again, signing something to say you are who you say you are.
Also new this year, if you don't have proper ID, you won't be turned away. Instead, you can fill out a personal identity affidavit.
And it's just a statement that they're declaring that they are, in fact, who they say they are and listing their current address. This is to help ensure that everybody that goes to the polls can either vote and/or register and vote.
Well, 13 years later, that's why the idea to get rid of that affidavit, House Bill 137 in 2023, failed to get past the House, and it died 33 to 61, with 1 absent. This idea of keeping people from their right as an American citizen.
That there are certain individuals within our state that lean towards the more elderly side who may or may not have a driver's license at this point in their life. They don't have a form of photo ID that's available to them when they go to cast a vote. So are we saying that those individuals, because they are no longer driving, should no longer have the ability to vote?
I haven't heard from a single prosecutor. I haven't heard from a single clerk that we need this kind of legislation to secure our voting process.
All right, first, no driver's license, no problem, because that same year in 2023, they kind of closed that hole. Lawmakers made it so Idaho's Transportation Department, they had to issue a no-fee photo ID for the purpose of voting. And they did that when they got rid of the student ID as an option. They did that later in the session. But here's the thing that you heard Democratic Representative John Gannon bring up 2 years ago, and what should accompany any legislation introduced in any year at the Idaho State House. What problem is this bill trying to solve? Are voter affidavits a problem? Senator Lenney's seemed to work, seemed legit. And as was said 2 years ago during that House floor debate, Nampa's Republican representative at the time, that'd be Kenny Roten, as he pointed out, Canyon County has never had a personal identification affidavit overturned, ever. And as we learned today, in Ada County, the state's largest county when it comes to population, Ada County also has never had an affidavit overturned. And Ada County had nearly 272,000 voters last November for the general election. You know how many signed an affidavit? 426. 426, that's it. Statewide, there were 1,200 out of the more than 914,000 voters. That's less than 0.2%. So again, the question is, what problem is this bill trying to solve? Ripe for fraud, according to Senator Lenney? 0.2%, no cases of illegal signatures in 14 years? Doesn't sound like a seed has been planted, much less fresh fruit ready for the picking, right? Regardless, Senator Lenney's bill, his identical bill from 2023, is waiting for a hearing in the Senate State Affairs Committee.